Accommodations. Oh, sorry, give it a voice over there. Each of the colleges organise their own admissions, accommodation, and tutorial instructions for students. You'll find that the tutors and the administrators have their offices within the college. And of course, as you'd expect, the colleges have teaching space, libraries, and they're also responsible for providing their own social activities, societies, and sports facilities. When you think of a college, you need to remember that you're not just going to be living and studying within the college, but you're also socializing and dining within the college. So as a result of this, many students who come through the system actually have a stronger allegiance to their college than to the university itself. So what I did here was I pulled together just some fun facts looking at each of the institutions. Oxford, second oldest university in the world. 10 points to Gryffindor if you know which university is the oldest, put it in the chat. Ranked first in the world for the past few years, around 24,000 students spread out across 45 colleges and halls now. You can see from the number of applications, it is grossly oversubscribed, it's incredibly competitive. The teaching is delivered through the tutorials, and about 45% of the student body are international students, so it's a really varied and diverse campus. Fun fact, it's home to the largest bookshop in the world, and just to put it in context for the geography of the country, it's located 60 miles to the west of London, because everyone seems to map everything out from London. When you look at Cambridge University, it's the 5th oldest university in the world, often ranked in the top 5 global universities, slightly smaller with 22,000 students across 31 colleges, and again, slightly lower student numbers. Teaching is delivered through supervisions, and about a quarter of the student body are international students. Cambridge is technically the birthplace of English football. Cambridge rules football came from here, and it's about 65 miles from London, heading north. Next slide. So what I've done here is I wanted to pull together some images and a very quick overview of each of the colleges that we work with. Kicking off with Oxford, we've got St Anne's College, which is well known for modern languages, pre-med and STEM. And then right next to it, we've got St Catherine's College for business, math, and music. And I think this is a really good point to look at the architectural differences between the two colleges here. People think of Oxford and Cambridge and they think of the spires, they think of Harry Potter. It's not all that. I mean, a lot of it is, but many of the colleges are in much more modern, late 20th century buildings. St Edmund Hall, or Teddy Hall, as it's commonly referred to, very strong reputation for economics, lab sciences, and political science. And then bottom right there, we've got Worcester College, really good reputation for history, philosophy, and political science. You'll notice the stunning lawn there in front of Worcester. Fun fact, because I'm full of fun, the lawn in Worcester College is very strictly off limits. You're only allowed to walk across it if you are a fellow of the university. Next slide, please. Moving on to the next 4, we've got Hartford College, anthropology, English, politics, women and gender studies, really strong reputations there. Lady Margaret Hall, their famous wildflower meadow in front of it, really good lead in business, econ, and music. Mansfield College, on a beautiful sunny day there, English, gender studies, and philosophy. And then probably one of the most gorgeous colleges, I think, in my opinion, Regent's Park College. Really strong reputation for econ, English, and history. So what you can see there is across the 8 colleges that we work with, there's a really diverse range of subjects and campus styles. We can now go on to look at Cambridge, and IFSA works with Cambridge and in particular with Pembroke College. And the reason we work with Pembroke College is they offer a huge, diverse range of courses from Anglo-Saxon, Norse, and Celtic studies all the way through to modern and medieval languages. Again, it's a little bit more of that Harry Potter-esque Tudor-style buildings, but it's a stunning campus and a very strong reputation in a very diverse range of subjects. So when you're thinking about which college you're going to apply for, there are 5 key factors which I really urge everybody to consider when you're doing so. So the first one is the subject. I strongly recommend you look to study in the area of your major. These colleges and these universities are incredibly competitive environments, and every application is up against a really large number of other very strong candidates. So put yourself in the very strongest position possible and look to study in the area of your major. In terms of locations, have a think about the type of place you want to be living, studying, and socializing. Cambridge is a little bit smaller than Oxford, a little bit quieter in some ways. Oxford is certainly a larger city. Another fun fact for you, Cambridge is only about 6 meters above sea level. So when the weather's right, you will often come out early morning or late evening and find rolling fog or mist rolling across the grounds, making it very atmospheric. In terms of the size, whilst all of these colleges are certainly a lot smaller than many of the US universities or colleges that you're joining us from today, there are definitely larger and smaller colleges within each university. So it's really worth doing your research when you're looking at them to see where they fit on that scale. Traditional or modern, well, you know, not every college looked like it appears in Harry Potter, although many of them did. And we saw on one of the images earlier on that some of the buildings are very modern. It is worth looking at because, you know, when you're looking to study at one of these institutions, it's good to be truly aware of what type of environment you're entering into. And then the last point I really ask people to sort of think about is accommodation. You're going to be living within the accommodation of the college, and these buildings are in many cases hundreds of years old. So the accommodation offered, the housing, won't necessarily be of a standard or a style which you're used to back on home. Of course, they're very well maintained, safe, secure, warm environments, but they won't quite align with what you've experienced before. That's part of the fun of this experience and opportunity. Thank you, Lynette.
Yep. Okay, so now we're going to switch gears. I'm going to tell you a little bit about what Oxford and Cambridge look for in an actual application. So here's what you need to know. Sorry, get my notes up. These programs are very competitive and they have a minimum GPA requirement of a 3.7. It is strict, and actually some of them have a 3.75 as their GPA minimum. So it's important that you check the IFSA website because we'll tell you which specific Oxford College has a 3.75 or a 3.7, and Cambridge is pretty much as a standard 3.75. Even if you've got a perfect 4.0, it doesn't necessarily guarantee that you get on these programs. So it's really important to keep in mind that GPA is not the only factor for admission. What you have to submit in your application is an academic statement that you write where you clearly articulate your goals for studying at the specific university and the specific college and in that major. I know Terrence mentioned that it's important to align your major of study at Oxford or Cambridge with what you're studying at home. That's actually a requirement. Oxford and Cambridge are not places where you can go and take, you know, an art class and try out a new language and take something for your major. No, it's very focused on one major or potentially two major subjects while you're abroad. So you really have to do your own research. It's very, very important that in your academic statement, in your application, you can clearly articulate why it makes a lot of sense for you and your major of study to be at that specific college and working in that specific department for a semester or an academic year. And we didn't mention it yet, but throughout the application process for Oxford and Cambridge, you work with an IFSA admission counselor, and they're going to give you guidance on where to look for information about the specific colleges. Oxford and Cambridge also expect that their students have strong independent study skills. So your ability to excel in independent study should also be mentioned in that academic statement that you put with the application. And you also have to get 2 faculty references. And when you're talking to references in the future, you're going to want to make sure that they can address the fact that you are a strong independent studier in the actual letter that they write on your behalf. So you're going to do a lot of one-to-one work with your tutor or supervisor at Oxford or Cambridge, and I'll go into a bit more detail on that in the next semester, or sorry, the next slide. but you will be submitting weekly essays. And for many students, that's pretty different than what you're used to at your home campus. But in that writing sample that you submit, you want to show that you can quickly articulate your ideas and back them up. So they really will be looking at your writing skills in the actual application. And you will submit writing samples in addition to your academic statement. I'll go into that on the next slide. I would also just encourage you to consider that because programs are so competitive at Oxford and Cambridge, it's really smart to have a backup application. You can work on a simultaneous application through IFSA while you're working on your Oxford and Cambridge application. And some common ones that are quite good to list as a backup would be the University of St. Andrews, which frankly is ranking higher than Oxford and Cambridge in some rankings at the moment. That's a highly prestigious university in Scotland. They offer a ton of subjects. University College Dublin, which has real strengths in research from all disciplines, and they're especially strong in STEM. And then Queen Mary University of London, which is another great university that has a wide breadth of offerings. In particular, for those of you that apply to Oxford, the application deadline is really, really early. It's early enough that we should know your admission decision still in enough time where you could switch to one of your backups if needed. So that's just a little tidbit to keep in mind. If I go to next slide, here is some more information about building a strong application. So as I've said before, you really need to show that you are linked to the subject that you want to study abroad. So these colleges prefer students who have taken 3 to 5 classes already in the subject that you want to be studying while you're at Oxford or Cambridge. It's likely to be in your major. Potentially you might have a minor in there depending on where you are in your studies. But when you apply to the schools, you're going to be applying to focus on 1 or 2 subjects. And they want to know that you have enough background information in order to understand and really dig into those subjects at Oxford and Cambridge. And you're going to show that off again in that academic statement that you submit with your application that's going to show a connection between what you've already been studying and what you hope to achieve while you're abroad. For anybody that's a double major, it's occasionally possible to pursue both majors or both subjects while you're at Oxford or Cambridge, but you have to make a very clear statement about how the 2 subjects are linked. And usually it works best if they are quite aligned. So that would be something like mathematics and computer science that both have a lot of overlap in the coding language and the mathematical formulas that you're using. It would be a lot harder to go and study literature and biology, or 2 very widely differing majors. So that's something that you just really need to keep in mind. Oxford and Cambridge are pretty strict in their application in that they don't just want to hear that you want to study at Oxford or Cambridge because they are famous and well regarded. They want to see that you are interested in the specific college and the expertise that they have in that subject through their faculty or tutors. So that, again, this is where doing your research is really, really important. The references that you submit in your application need to be from 2 academics on your home campus. Optimally, they are from 2 professors that are in the major or subject that you want to study while you're at Oxford or Cambridge. And it's important that you have 2 of them. We give you instructions in the application process, but they need to be formal letters on university letterhead. And you want to give your faculty members enough time to complete these letters to submit with your application. The admissions process itself differs between the host institutions. So Cambridge actually has 2 deadlines. So March 15th for the academic year or fall semester program, or April 1st for spring. So it's really important to keep in mind that they kind of hold 35 spaces for our students. And they start reviewing applications starting on January 1st. So even though we have application deadlines that go into March and April, it's more likely that you're going to get accepted if you can apply before February 1st. They might have a few spaces left by the time we get to March 15th and April 1st. So that's why we have those later deadlines. But we really want you to maximize your chances for getting in. Oxford is different. they have a very strict deadline. It is January 15th for everything happening next academic year. So even if you want to go and study abroad in spring of 2023, you need to apply by January 15th of 2022. And the admissions are subject to departmental preference, not rolling decisions. So they're going to wait till they have all of the applications submitted January 15th, look at the whole pool, send it out to each academic department that might host a student, and then make their decision. And some departments make quick decisions within, 6 weeks, and some of them take a bit of a long time. Occasionally, if a department doesn't have space for you, they might send your name and your application packet over to a different department or even a different Oxford College for your consideration. So they do try and get as many spaces to students as possible. Okay, so now I want to give a little overview of the actual tutorial system or TRIPOS system. At Oxford, this is called the tutorial system, and it is generally made up of one-to-one discussions with your tutor or professor. Occasionally, there might be up to 3 students in one tutorial. And when I say tutorial, I mean that you will have a primary tutorial. It's like a class, which is very, very individualized based on the subject that you are interested in pursuing. Students at Oxford have one primary tutorial, which is worth 8 US semester credits, and one secondary tutorial, which is worth 4 US semester credits. Often these are in the same academic department, but again, if you're doing kind of a double major and you need a little wiggle room, to do math and computer science or 2 complementary majors, this is where you would see that coming in. You'd have one primary and one secondary subject. Generally, students meet with their tutor weekly for the primary tutorial and then every other week for the secondary tutorial. Each Oxford College also holds lectures and events through the semester, and they're not required, but they are considered part of the education. And it's really an expectation that you go and attend anything that your college offers because the college considers that part of the educational experience. And those are going to be the things, those lectures that happen from visiting experts are going to be the things that you discuss in some of those tutorials. So you want to show that you are following up and keeping up with the independent study part of your degree or your time at Oxford. Oxford also offers a early start option in 4 of the Oxford colleges. And that's when you would start a month early and take an additional 4 semester credit tutorial, kind of an intensive experience over that month, just to get you used to the tutorial system and get you kind of settled into Oxford ahead of time. It means that you would get 16 semester credits if you did the early start option instead of 12. And so that's also important for some of you on campuses that need you to take more than 12 semester credits during a fall semester. So I'm going to switch gears and talk about the TRIPOS system. So this is the Cambridge Supervision system, and they have this really unique option that is just for visiting students called TRIPOS, and it's made up of supervisions or those tutorials, additional lectures, and then the examinations that you have. And supervisions are just like the tutorials that I mentioned at Oxford. They're weekly small group discussions where you study with a professor. Pembroke then offers lectures and on a whole assortment of topics, but you are required to go to those to supplement your learning. And that's because it's likely that you're going to discuss the lecture that was offered in the college in one of your supervision meetings with that one-to-one faculty member. At the end of the semester, TRIPOS students have a test that's specifically designed or an exam to cover what you as a visiting student studied over that semester while at the college. And occasionally, instead of a comprehensive examination, you might be able to produce like a 6,000 to 8,000 word essay at the end of the semester instead of the exam, but that's case by case and would be arranged with your tutor and the college director of studies. Cambridge students complete 2 supervisions each semester, and each one is worth 12 US semester credit hours. So you would get a total of 24 semester credits for that Cambridge semester. So I've got one more slide kind of about the tutorials, and it's really just more in depth about how you prepare to be successful in the supervision or tutorial. And this is something that you want to ask our guest students about at the end of the session. So the bulk of your one-to-one instruction will be in that tutorial or supervision session with a professor, AKA your tutor. Um, these sessions really require students to be self-motivated and self-directed. And what this looks like is, you need to do independent homework. You will be given a suggested reading list, but really it's not a suggestion. It's something that you need to do. And you also need to be looking for your own ways to build up your knowledge in that subject via the various Oxford or Cambridge libraries or museums or different resources that you have access to as an Oxford or Cambridge student. The actual meeting times for your tutorial are arranged kind of usually after you arrive, and they might be held in a college lecture room or a university building. And occasionally we've even had tutors that invite their students to come to their house and sit around the kitchen table and have their tutorial session discussion there. So what the actual tutorial piece looks like is that usually you're assigned a paper on a topic each week that you will send back to the professor before you meet with them the next time, or potentially they'll have you bring it in and you read it out loud in front of them, face to face, or you might read it in front of a couple students if you're in a tutorial group. Um, this is to train you to really capture your thoughts and opinions and back them up in with your own independent thoughts. Your tutor is less of a teacher lecturing at you, but they're instead there to encourage deeper learning, and they're going to question you and push your understanding of the topic. So really you need to think of them less as a professor and more of a mentor who will guide you through the subject itself. And it's very academically rigorous. I'm sure our students who are going to talk at the end will tell you how that's going for them. So preparing for the tutorials, as I've said, it's really different than being in the US. The advantage of a tutorial is that for that hour a week, you have like undivided attention from a faculty or tutor expert. So you can get a lot out of that hour as opposed to being in some, US style classes that are a couple hours a week, but the professor's talking to everybody and helping everybody. Like you get undivided attention and you can really dig into that subject. You will have enough in that hour to kind of propel you onward to do your own independent study for the next week until your next meeting. Um, Oxford students in particular really have to become accustomed to that self-directed study and independent work. Tutors don't necessarily give out facts and information because they expect you to bring questions to them and have the facts and information emerge in the discussions that you have. So when you actually write those assigned essays each week, there will be a list of resource books or journals or materials that the tutor has provided ahead of time. So they really will, it'll say like recommended reading list, but it is something that you need to do. And the whole idea is that you're going to review these and think about, any lectures that you've attended in your college as well, and bring that to the meeting each week. So it's very dynamic. So some prior students have said that a really good thing to do is to treat your tutorial kind of like a full-time job. So even if you just have that 1 hour meeting a week when you are not actively in your tutorial or supervision class, you should be studying independently and using the Oxford resources at the libraries and going to discussions and lectures. So, treat it like a 9 to 5 job. That gives you time for your own free stuff in the evenings, but it also means that you're dedicating enough time to really delve into your subject of study. I just would want to give a little blurb about who the tutors are. Most visiting students that are at Oxford and Cambridge get tutors that are from specific colleges. Occasionally, they'll bring in kind of a guest expert or even a PhD student to be your tutor. It all depends on the semester and what you're interested in. Okay, so I'm passing it back to Terrence to talk about student life.
Thanks, Lillian. So I'm going to talk to you very briefly about student life. I say briefly, not because it's not an important part of the experience, but because I think there are two voices who are going to join this conversation towards the end who have a much better take on it and certainly a much more recent take on it than I do. But more broadly, joining the institutions, you'll be coming in as a visiting student. So you really are considered to be a full member of the college, and you'll have access to facilities, lectures, libraries, societies, and a number of the sporting teams. You'll also have access to the junior common room, the JCR, and enjoy privileges in there. And you really will be living and studying and socializing alongside degree-seeking students. There's a vast number of societies and clubs which you'll be permitted to join. But putting that to one side, you know, over my years working with students, one thing that I've learned is that as much value as there is in joining these clubs, there's huge value also in getting together as a group in the kitchen and cooking together. And this is where so many friendships are made, especially within these colleges. And also the value of watching the Great British Bake Off really comes through, because if you can make a good Victoria sponge and serve up to your friends, you're sorted, really. You also have access to the traditional dining hall, so still talking about food, which will oftentimes have formal dinners and balls and events which you'll be permitted to attend. But most importantly, above all of this, as a visiting student, you are held to exactly the same standards as all of the other degree-seeking undergraduate students. Tutors will expect from you the same high standard of work as they would from anybody else. And when you successfully complete the program, you will be considered alumni of that college. We can go on to the next slide. So finally, from me, I just want to talk a little bit about the support that I and my team would provide to you whilst you're spending your time over in Oxford or Cambridge. We're always there to help. We've got a good team based here in London, but we do travel the country and we are often visiting Oxford or Cambridge. And we're there to help about anything, really. If you need guidance on getting medical support, you just want to have a chat with somebody about feeling homesick, you need to ask some questions about the structure of the program, we are always just a phone call or an email away, and we can be with you relatively quickly. You will have an arrival orientation when you arrive in the city. At the moment, we're doing them online, just like we are today. And that's an opportunity for a member of my team to really talk to you about the experience, of course, but also about the reality. Where are you living? Where do you go shopping to buy your mobile phone, to get bedding? Where's the nearest supermarket in relation to where you're going to be staying? We'll help set you up on your first day to make sure you have all of that information to hand. We'll also work with you to ensure that you can identify your personal, professional, and academic goals on your IFSA learning plan. And this is something that you'll actually start to work on before you can leave the US or travel over to the UK. And the goal is really to give you an opportunity to map out what your goals and priorities are before you arrive in country. And then we'll work with you throughout the duration of the program to really revisit them at frequent points to see, have they changed? Have you achieved them? What's different? We really want to understand how the experience is for you. Most importantly, towards the end of the program, we'll help you facilitate a conversation about how your time at either Oxford or Cambridge will help propel you forwards towards your future goals. Because as important as it is to look at what you're studying and the grades you're looking to achieve right now, we've also got an eye on your future goals and what will happen once you go home and graduate, and the part that studying abroad will play in that. We'll go to the next slide. So if we've got Jeff and Nethia still on the call, they're both here. Can we have you with your videos on if you don't mind? Or at least your audio. Hi. Hey Jeff, hey Nethia. How are you both doing? Well?
I'm doing well, thanks for having us. So not entirely sure, should I just go start with my kind of experience with Cambridge?
Yeah, I thought maybe to start with, let's kick off with you then, Jeff. If you wouldn't mind just telling us a little bit about yourself, where you're studying and what you're studying, and then sort of really moving into the key questions to get everything rolling. How did you decide?
Right, so I'm actually from Villanova University as well. I think there's some other, there's one other person in this call from Villanova, and I'm doing a double major in business economics and also philosophy at Villanova. So fortunately, when I applied to Cambridge, I was actually able to get a paper or a course in both of the majors after I emailed them and discussed my intentions with the academic statement. To be frank, though, I would have probably applied to Oxford if I didn't like completely miss the deadline, because like as you guys mentioned, it's over a year beforehand that you need to apply. And I actually applied to Cambridge like 3 days before the deadline was met, and I think I got like the last spot. So I like was frantically emailing my professors for a reference letter and all that. So if you're looking to apply for these programs, make sure you're stepping ahead of the curve and preparing for that. But overall, my experience has been really awesome here. You know, it's a short 3 months. Like I think it's technically less than 3 months exactly. So it's very short compared to a traditional American university, 4 month style where you get breaks in between. So we don't have breaks. We don't have like a fall break in between. And so the academic aspect of it is very intense. And it's definitely one of the biggest culture shocks for me, at least when I got here and I had to, write a 3,000 to 4,000 word paper every week for my philosophy paper. And it was on topics that I've never even heard of about. And I had to, argue and defend my point with a, Cambridge philosophy scholar. So that was definitely a big culture shock. But in terms of academics, it's definitely one of the best academically challenging and academically stimulating aspect, because your supervisor's giving me he's giving me a lot of feedback. Like this is probably the most feedback I've ever gotten on any course, right? So he's giving me like a full page of annotated feedback on the paper, but then another full page of like descriptive feedback. So definitely, like if you're looking to get intellectual challenge here, this Oxbridge is the place to be at for that one-on-one experience. But yeah, other than that, I think I touched on those points on the screen there.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much, Jeff. Really appreciate that.
No
And
problem.
Lithia, welcome to the session.
Hi. Sorry, I was a little late. My computer completely crashed, and then I was trying to frantically join the session. But yeah, So I attend Franklin and Marshall College, which is in Pennsylvania, and currently I am at Oxford. I'm at St. Edmund Hall, also called Teddy Hall. And yeah, I decided to apply here because, well, I was supposed to study abroad last spring, and so I applied to Worcester College at Oxford last spring, and I got in. And I was supposed to go, and then the program got canceled. And then this semester, I sort of switched and applied to Teddy because I'm a double major, so I do econ and psych. And I first wanted to study econ at Worcester, and then after that I decided I wanted to focus on psych here, and so I switched to St. Edmund Hall. But yeah, my experience applying, since I've applied twice, it's been really great. I found the thing to be very, very straightforward, and it was because I had to do a lot of switching, and then I found IFSA to be really helpful with having to navigate how to switch from one college to the other, and how to switch my focus of study from one college to the other, and things like that. And so that was really, it was pretty straightforward. And the tutorial system, like everybody else has described, it's quite intense. I think that I went to a very small liberal arts college, and so I was used to having smaller classes, so it wasn't as overwhelming as some of the other people and the visiting students here have found. But I think it's a really, really great system if you want to learn at your own pace, and if you want to really, really push how much you know and how much you can learn within an hour. I think that the amount of work that goes into it and the amount that you learn at the end of it is really rewarding. And as far as grading goes, my professors haven't been super vocal about grading specifically. I think they're more so focused about my trajectory and how I've sort of improved since the beginning of the term to the end. And so it's mostly just a lot of feedback that I've gotten about my papers, and they've all been really, really helpful to making me feel much more confident about my writing, but also a lot more, I don't know, it's almost automatic at this point because I write so frequently. It's like having to write a paper before was sort of this giant task that I had to come to terms with, and then after I'd be like, okay, I need to do this, and now it's kind of, yeah, it's very automatic. And I think practicing writing at Oxford and at Cambridge are fantastic ways to improve how you write and how you think about things and how you critically examine things. Yeah, and it's been a really great time, and yeah, it's been very short and very quick, and things turn around really quickly, but I've really enjoyed my time here.
Fantastic, thank you. If I could ask you both one final question. If you could give one piece of advice to a student that was considering applying and then going on to study at Oxford or Cambridge, what would that be? And I'm completely putting you on the spot here.
I think one thing that I would say would be to wait. Actually, I actually have a question. Is this in regards to the application or in regards to what they do after they come here? What's the advice directed towards?
You know, I would say anything at all, really, because as much as the application is what we're here to talk about today, I think life in the college is equally important. So what, you know, applying to any part of it would be good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, then my advice would basically just be to expect how fast things progress within that specific term, and to make as much use of the resources that are available as possible. I think that I learned a lot of things slightly later on in the term about what I could do in terms of activities that I could participate in terms of lectures that I could go to, and other talks and things like that. And there's so much happening on campus all the time. And so it's really, really useful to make note of that and actively try to engage with other people and try to find out as much as possible in terms of what you can go to and what you can attend, and make the most of your time here, because it's a very, very short period of time and things go really quickly.
Fantastic. And Jeff, any words of advice for future students?
Right. So I would definitely say you have to have a genuine motivation and reason for going to Oxford specifically. And this is coming from someone, I've actually done 4 study abroad, so I kind of consider myself a study abroad expert at this point. And I'll be frank, the first 3 study abroads were, you know, they were basically for fun. Like I went to Singapore, Shanghai, and Hong Kong, and I was doing, you know, coursework and I was doing internships, but they were primarily for fun. But if you're going to Oxbridge, you're like, it's not to say that you're not going to have fun here, but you're doing that 1 paper a week. You're doing these lectures. You're like, I'm living next to where Stephen Hawking lived, and I walk in the halls of where Newton studied and Wittgenstein, this great philosopher, studied. And you're kind of in this aura of like, this is where you want to push yourself intellectually, academically, and, you know, try to see what you can achieve in terms of those aspects. I actually have a friend here who's like, she's complaining that we're always in the library and reading and stuff. And I'm like, well, what did you really expect? If you're going to Oxbridge, you're expected to do a paper a week. So if like, just be honest with yourself and be self-aware. Like, what is your genuine reason? Yeah, it does look good on the resume, Cambridge, Oxbridge. But if you wanted to go abroad, and, you know, it's okay to go abroad and have fun and travel, I don't think this is the place to be if that's your main intent. I would say, yeah, go to Singapore, and you can travel to all the Asian countries there, or maybe even like a London program, so you're more centrally located. But I guess even during, you know, right now because of COVID, it's not like you know, we're trying to do a backpacking Europe trip anyways, so that's not really a big consideration. But yeah, so this is academically, this is where to be for the academics, and it's definitely one of the most rewarding experiences I've had so far.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much. Lillian.
Yeah, so I want to open it up for anybody else to ask questions because you've got this great opportunity to talk to Jeff and Nithya. So if you want to chat them in the box or just unmute yourself, you are more than welcome. I guess while people think, I was curious if you guys could tell us about your experience being abroad during COVID. Because I know that's on a lot of students' minds. So maybe we'll start with you, Nithya.
Yeah, like I said, my original program was canceled due to COVID, and so I think for me specifically, I think I'm much more reminded of the fact that I think so many people haven't been able to do what they wanted to do during their college experience, and I've gotten the chance to do that. And so I'm much more aware of that, and I try to make the most of my time here because I know that that's not something that's very, yeah, I don't think that a lot of people who actually wanted to go abroad have been able to. And so I think that that's really cool that these programs are still running. That being said, I don't know. I think COVID has definitely impacted how things are run, but I don't think I'm necessarily missing out on too much that is happening. I think people have had to do a lot to make sure that the college runs as similarly as before. And I think that, yeah, I think it's definitely more stressful in terms of what you can do, what you can't do, and you have to be very careful about certain things. But I think that overall, I'm just, yeah, really grateful to be here.
I'm in the same situation with Nithya. Yeah, I think I got my program canceled 3 times. But Pembroke was really fortunate because they just basically took my application and said, well, you were already accepted once, and because of COVID, not by my own decision, they just transferred my application, and we kept getting deferred on and on. But in terms of like COVID restrictions here in the UK, they're actually pretty much they're pretty much open now in the UK. So in terms of like that aspect, it's not that big of an issue, but we're still taking precautions, wearing masks, and not like going clubbing every day and trying to stay away from big crowds. But yeah, I don't know how it would be in terms of non-COVID study abroad experiences. Again, if you wanted to go abroad and like take a weekend trip every weekend, like that's something I did when I was in Singapore. I was taking like $50 flights to like Indonesia and like Thailand. Yeah, I wouldn't choose Oxbridge to be the place to be doing that, because you need those weekends to catch up on your studies, at least for me, for the coursework.
Thanks for that. And that's a good point about kind of independent travel right now. Because of the pandemic, IFSA heavily discourages students from crossing any international borders because you never know when that border is going to close. So if you want to plan your semester or year and do independent travel, we would encourage you to do it at the end of your program so you don't disrupt your academic experience, because you guys put in a ton of work to get accepted and get ready to go to Oxford and Cambridge. Let me look at some of the other questions. I will have to check back in about the TOEFL scores for international students. I honestly can't remember off the top of my head. And I will tell you, we do get a lot of international students who are admitted to to Oxford and Cambridge. So don't let that be a worry to you. There's a question for you guys about your typical day and what that looks like as a student. So would you be able to talk about that?
Yeah, I think it's sort of hard for me to answer that because every day looks very different. I'm currently a senior and I'm also applying to go to graduate school right now, and all of my applications are due by the end of the term. And I'm also doing an independent study back at home as well. So I have not just stuff that I'm doing here with the tutorials, but also other things as well. That being said, I think my day is sort of starts at like me going to the library, as fun as that sounds, and getting some work done in the morning, and then getting lunch with a couple of people that I know, and then I sometimes have lectures on some days. I don't have lectures on other days. I have tutorials some days. I don't have tutorials on other days. And then after that, there are always some stuff happening on the in the evenings in terms of clubs and activities, or in terms of talks that you can go to, or certain events. And then there are like luncheons that you can go to. So sometimes I go to that. And then again, I go back to the library. I've sort of become accustomed to going to different libraries at different times of the day because I need a change in environment. And the good thing about being at Oxford is that you have access to a bunch of different libraries. And so you can go and try to figure out which one works for you, or if multiple ones work for you, then yeah, go do that. And then I get dinner with some friends, and sometimes we do things late at night, or so I sort of live in this guest house, and you have a common room that people play games at. Sometimes I do work. Yeah, it's very, I think each day just comes with things that you need to get done and things that you want to do. And a lot of times I do go on long walks and things like that. Somebody told me at Oxford one time, they said that if you're ever stuck on an essay, it's a very, very good thing to just go on a long walk and remind yourself why you're here, and remind yourself of the people that have worked here and the people that have done so many incredible things here. So that's something that I try to do a lot. And yeah, I think every day just comes and goes, and yeah, I'm sorry it's not more strict, but yeah.
I'd say, yeah, mine is kind of the same. Every day is definitely very different. I will say one of the big culture shocks of coming here is the lack of structure, because I quite literally only have commitments on Thursdays. So I have all my lectures are on Thursdays in the morning, and both my supervisions that are happening right now are also on Thursday. So that basically means I have no commitments for 6 days of the week, but that means I still need to be self-motivated to produce like the papers and also the problem sets for my econometrics paper. And if you're like falling behind, or if you're not very good at structuring your own independent activities, it gets very confusing personally I had to that was a culture shift I had personally. But because of that, you can wake up a little bit later. You can go visit the cafes and explore different libraries. Sometimes I do take a day trip just to London and explore London and come back within the same day. So you definitely have a lot of variety. But I will say most typical days, there's a good amount of studying in the library, and a good amount of also getting to be social with friends you make, either like having dinner with them or eating at the servery. And I'll also just quickly touch on Kristen's question about living in the residential halls. So I'm not like living I'm living in like a campus dorm style, where there's about 5 of us in this like flat, like a apartment flat. And I was pretty lucky because I actually ended up getting the master bedroom. So I have a private bathroom and a very large room, but most of the time you're going to be sharing a bathroom with multiple people in your flat, kind of like a hostel style accommodation. And in terms of Cambridge's accommodation at Pembroke, I think Pembroke is probably one of the best colleges at Cambridge, because all our lecture halls are like a minute a walk away, and our campus is like also just across the street. So, and we're also very centrally located. So in terms of Pembroke College at Cambridge, it's probably one of the best locations. And I know some of the other colleges are very far away. Like I know friends who are walking 30 minutes to lecture halls, where I can wake up like 10 minutes before the lecture happens.
Nithya, do you want to talk any more about housing before we switch?
Sure, yeah. So like I said, I live in a guest house about 10 minutes away from my campus. And I live with all of the other visiting students and some DPhil students as well, some people doing masters and PhDs. And so my guest house is quite strange. Everybody has a very different type of room. I'd say like some people have a sink in their room, some people have a bathroom. I have a bathroom and a bathtub but no shower. Some people have 2 sinks, and so it's just, you get whatever you sort of yeah, it's all very different, but you do have like in a dorm you have a kitchen, and then you have some, yeah, you share a shower and things like that. But yeah, so my location is about 10 minutes away, but the walk is really nice. I essentially walk across this bridge that overlooks this giant castle, and then I just like walk over, and it's a really nice walk. So I'm not complaining too much about it. And my college is also very centrally located, so yeah, it's a really nice place to be in.
Fantastic. Just looking at the other questions.
So I'll speak to the application question that just popped up of somebody who's really planning ahead and looking at the January 2023 deadline. The timeline is pretty similar. So about this time in a year is when you'll be working on your Oxford application to submit it. I would say always work on developing those relationships with your faculty at your home campus over the next year, because these are going to be the people who are writing your letters and speaking to your abilities, and those are really important in the process. There's also a query about kind of any special advice for international students. I would say that, again, Oxford and Cambridge are very open to admitting IFSA students from all different backgrounds. There's some additional logistical pieces that have to do with applying for a visa, depending on how long you're going to be in the UK and what country you're coming from, but that's something that we work on. IFSA provides documents, and so does the host institution, and we tell you when it's time to do that application process. But there's not a differential program fee for those of you that are pay this to IFSA directly. The IFSA program fee is the same for any IFSA student that goes on these programs. Okay. There's a great question about academic accommodations. So that is something that IFSA can help work on ahead of time. So when you're applying to the program, if you get accommodations on your campus, like extra test time or some note-taking assistance, or if you have a hidden or physical disability, that's something we'll work on ahead of time with the IFSA program advisors and admissions counselors, as well as the health and safety team. They will liaise with the staff on site, who will also talk to the Oxford and Cambridge to figure out what can be arranged for you ahead of time. It's really important to keep in mind that the Americans with Disabilities Act doesn't apply to other countries. So while you, depending on your specific need, the host institutions will do the best that they can to address the support that you need, but it might look different than what you receive back at home. All right, there is also a question about how IFSA works in all of this. And that is a good question. And I guess Terrence and I didn't really give an overview at the start, but we have relationships with these Oxford colleges. And what that means is that your home campuses can have a relationship with us and give you access to applying to various Oxford colleges and Cambridge. Other universities don't do it that way. They might set up an exchange, which would allow just a few students to go back and forth. So we are there to provide an extra layer of support through the application process and to give you guidance along the way to, I think, increase your chances of being accepted. And then while you're abroad, we have orientations and guidance that we give you. Terrence explained some of the work that we do with the future focus. So we help you with your goal setting and working through kind of what you hope to get out of the experience and how you hope this experience actually impacts your wider life. The other thing is that we're another layer of health and safety support. So if you're feeling ill or if you have some sort of emergency, we are there to help you out. We also arrange activities and excursions. So there are different activities. Usually there's like a day trip, potentially an overnight, pending COVID situations, and you might be able to go to a different part of England, or it might take Oxford students into London to participate in some tours that are really unique. Terrence, I should turn that over to you to talk about what you've been doing with the students now.
Absolutely. It's been a challenging time, trying to maintain an active program of social activities for students across the country in COVID. What we've had to do, unfortunately, is scale back to a certain degree the activities. So we haven't been able to do as many of the full-day excursions or certainly any overnight trips because of COVID. But what we have tried to do is look at arranging walking tours, theatre visits. We've got campuses and programs in a number of different cities at the moment. So we're really trying to roll out an engaging social program, looking at environments where we can keep students safe, well protected. I know on our IFSA England and Wales Instagram feed, I think this morning or yesterday, some images went up of a visit to Oxford Prison, which was quite good fun, some great photo ops there. Afternoon teas, really anywhere where we can sort of take students out, give them an introduction into the culture or history of the country, but also at the same time keeping everybody safe and protected to the best of our abilities.
So I know we're a bit over our planned time. I did want to address two of the other questions that are in here. So what's the difference between IFSA, the Sarah Lawrence Oxford program, and OSAP? And I'm not quite sure what the OSAP program is. I know a little bit about Sarah Lawrence. I believe they have an option with one of the Oxford colleges. And so you would be limited to the subjects that they teach on that program. IFSA works with 8 of the Oxford colleges. And I think that's a real strength because you've got you can get some guidance in finding the right Oxford college that meets your specific needs and interests. But I would encourage you to go back and talk to your home campus study abroad advisor if you have options to choose between multiple Oxford or Cambridge opportunities, because they'll help you be able to differentiate between the different options. So we will send out a link to the recording of this. When we send that out, and I'll send it to anybody who registered, I'll include a kind of cheat sheet that helps you tell the difference between the different Oxford colleges, because it's quite helpful. And we can also link in any other resources. I would encourage you, if you're planning for next year, so for the 2022 kind of fall academic year or even spring, start your Cambridge or Oxford application now so that you can look at all the components and learn about any of the pieces and plan ahead for what you need to submit. And I want to thank Jeff and Nithya for joining us today. I know it's the end of your guys' day, but it's been great to hear about your experience.
No problem. Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Really
Perfect.
nice.
Good. And best of luck for the rest of your time abroad. And have a good evening, everybody in the UK, and a good day, everybody else. And thanks, Terrence, for joining us from London.
My absolute pleasure. Have a great day, everyone.
All right. Take care. Bye.
Bye.